Larry?
I think our group, and I don't want to speak for everybody, so if I'm misspeaking, I hope they speak up. I think the issue that our group looked at was that it seemed as if we had to pick one of the organizations on this sheet of paper, it would be the LC CMR.
Okay.
And I think the reason for that is that it includes legislators as well as appointees from the private sector, which I think would help to spread the gospel in the Capitol perhaps more effectively than we can do as a citizen-appointed group of the government.
Other feelings about? And what we'll do is we'll work on some language that then you'll see in the next version that will reference our sort of synthesis of this.
Margaret, this is Dana.
Yep, Dana, go ahead.
Just want to get in line for comments.
Go ahead.
I can't see the room.
Yep, go ahead and comment.
Just want to ask about the three examples that we've talked about. The focus of what we want to accomplish with this group. Can we spend a few minutes articulating that? Because the examples we've been looking at are very policy-driven organizations, and that would be the product of those groups as structured in the examples would be the development of policy and keeping those policy issues in front of legislators. And I would just put out there for discussion about considering other models. For instance, one that looks particularly interesting, although it's a completely different approach, is the Massachusetts Broadband Institute that was put into place by their governor in 2007, and where the focus of that organization is more of a boots on the ground, doing the work of closing the gap. Where my gut is that we would need a combination of both, but maybe all of this conversation happened in a subgroup, but I haven't really heard it clearly articulated about what our goals are with this group.
Well, I think the overall goal is that by having a task force or commission named in statute that's ongoing, that has more than one appointing authority, there is more buy-in on the policies and, first of all, understanding of the problem, the definition of how to approach the problem, and then how to marshal the resources to do it, whether that's a policy change or whether that's some other mechanism to be able to do that. I mean, I think of something like the Commission to End Poverty as having had a fairly wide scope of influence, actually, in terms of their recommendations. It certainly was not entirely just legislative focused, and they certainly brought in other people. But I think those are the main goals behind it. I think the boots on the ground idea, you know, one other piece of this is establishing an Office of Broadband, which we've also talked about, which might, you know, it already, what, pardon?
I was just going to say, it is there.
It's there, but it's not as fully realized as it could be. And that might have more the charge of the sort of boots on the ground or coordination of boots on the ground versus something that has appointment by the legislature and the governor. I mean, really what we're talking about, to meet these big goals, we need deeper understanding than one or two people in the legislature who understand what the heck we're talking about. And that's, I think, honestly, when we had this discussion almost a year ago, that was kind of my aha is things don't move forward without having a broader group of people understanding what we're trying to get to and what the challenges are, and then formulating the ideas that actually get them there.
Absolutely, that helps me a lot. So we're looking at two components of the same challenge. In other words, I was trying to be clear in my head whether or not we were proposing something that would take place of what currently exists. But we're talking about augmenting it and having it live beyond the charge that we've been given.
Right. I mean, I think the idea would be that if this got put in place, the governor's broadband task force would probably be consumed into somehow in some functioning being a core part of this task force or commission or whatever it's called, so that there's a way to make that transition. You know, my experience with these things, I think if we write some general language like that and give a couple examples like LCC, MR, and maybe the Energy Task Force group as sort of the structure, that we can get someone engaged to kind of pick that up and work with us from the governor, you know, from the commissioner's office, governor's office. But, you know, ultimately you need legislators to carry the bill. So you need to create some champions who are going to do such a thing. Bernadine.
We didn't have a chance to, we started it on a different task and didn't have a fulsome conversation about this one. So I'm just going to speak for myself. But there was interesting range of views in it. But from my perspective, I like the idea of saying sort of what is it we're after rather than being real prescriptive about the exact form. And what I'm after is a standing body with an ongoing charge to support the legislature and the state in meeting the goals. That has to come with dedicated staff, and that it should be a trans-agency body, that it's not, and this is where I know there are a range of views around the group, but that I think it better serve the goals of the governor, at least for the current task force, if this was not inside an existing agency, but rather had participants from across the executive sector.
Might need a home though, because if it doesn't have a home, nobody owns it, is one of the issues. So I would say if we could amend that friendly and say, it needs a home, but then it needs to have the sort of authority to pull in.
But would you say LCCMR has a home?
Oh,
isn't
yes.
it its own, but
Yes,
its staff
through the
is-
coordinating commission.
Well, okay.
See, there's a whole different entity here that is nonpartisan, both bodies that have staff
I think we're talking
that,
about the same thing, because for me, they have a staff, right, they have the resources.
yeah, but they have a home, because we fight for that against the governor always.
But
I mean,
the
that's
home
what
is
happens.
a trans-agency home, right? Is it created only for that purpose, to support the?
I don't think so. The difference with LCCMR, I think the big difference we're looking at here is they have money. And what their main purpose is really to distribute, make recommendations on distribution of funding to further goals. And that's why it's important to maybe include something like the Energy Task Force, because they are not in the business of making recommendations on money. And I think that if we only included LCCMR, the problem will be people will say, well, are you guys talking about like distributing money out to people or whatever? And what we're talking about is structure more, and so it's suggested structure. I think you can actually accomplish that, but I would really strongly argue if you don't have a home and a commissioner who actually cares about this thing and would look out for it, kind of keep it under wing, it'll go away within a little bit. Because nobody owns it, and nobody cares. The next crisis there is, they don't. I speak because I know the mindset. I mean, the mindset is nobody owns it, nobody cares for it.
Yeah, I think we, at least those of us who have spoken, are thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a better voice and a broader involvement, particularly by legislators in my case, because I just think that unless they're involved and we have some buy-in, the things that need to be accomplished have a lesser chance of getting done.
So why don't you let the sort of group of writers take a stab at the language around this, and then you will see it in the next version and give feedback. So it's a place to definitely note that is going to be, you know, more fleshed out from what you're seeing today. On the vignettes, I'm just curious, do you have good feedback that you want to pass in to Joanna? I don't know that we have to discuss every one.